freak weather that's now more common because of global warming struck Kerr County, Texas in the early morning hours of the 4th of July. A severe rainstorm caused the banks of the Guadalupe River to burst, sending a surge of water over bridges, into people's homes, and across campsites that sat along the river. The current death toll surpassed 100, including more than 24 little girls and counselors who were attending a summer camp known as Camp Mystic that got consumed by the floodwaters. 11 people are still missing from the camp. The National Weather Service issued flood warnings for the area beginning more than 12 hours before the river broke. But for some reason, local officials didn't feel compelled to issue any alerts or evacuations for the area. Kerr's city manager promised a full investigation into what happened. But U.S. weather forecasters are operating under more constraints now due to mass staffing cuts and a pullback in resources under the Trump administration. Hundreds of workers, scientists, forecasters have been forced out of the National Weather Service, including at the office that oversees forecasts around Texas. Congressman Joaquin Castro, who represents the district affected by the flooding, said there should be an investigation if these cuts and layoffs had anything to do with the failure to respond. Here he was on CNN.
And I don't think it's helpful to have missing key personnel from the National Weather Service not in place to help prevent these tragedies. And, when I say that we ought to do everything possible to help prevent a tragedy like again, that's part of what I mean. That's why there's an incredible value to the National Weather Service. I do think that it should be investigated, and not having enough personnel is never helpful.
Now, whether or not there's a direct line between this particular flood and the recent layoffs at the National Weather Service doesn't actually matter, because this is a sign of things to come. Under Trump, the U.S. is deconstructing its weather forecasting systems because right-wingers want to A, privatize them, and B, suppress evidence of global warming, just as global warming is making the weather more dangerous. Any dummy can figure out what will come of this, especially in Texas, where only a few years ago, back in 2021, hundreds of people died as a result of the state's power grid failing during winter storms. And more related to this recent flooding, the New York Times reported that in 2017, Kerr County officials debated installing flood warning sirens along the Guadalupe River, but ultimately rejected the idea. A county judge, Rob Kelly, told the paper, quote, "Taxpayers won't pay for it." Is that the case? Or is it that elected officials on the right refuse to even try to make the argument for why climate change mitigation investments are absolutely necessary to protect life? And the right still won't accept what's happening. Instead, we get stuff like this from Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. One day after the flood, she posted on Twitter that she's going to introduce legislation to, quote, end the dangerous and deadly practice of weather modification and geoengineering. She claimed that her bill would prohibit the injection, release, or dispersion of chemicals or substances into the atmosphere for the express purpose of altering weather, temperature, climate, or sunlight intensity. Well, I hope the bill includes the fossil fuel industry, one of the biggest weather modifiers in the history of the planet. The bill includes the fossil fuel industry, right? Right? No. Greene is the same congresswoman who once blamed the California wildfires on satellite lasers built by the Rothschilds. Because ultimately, I guess it's easier to spin wild theories about Jewish space lasers causing climate change disasters than to just admit you're part of a damn death cult. Hey, thanks for watching. Hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any of our new videos. Also, if you want to see Means Morning News in its complete form, not just the clips we post here, head on over to Means TV and get access to all our new episodes and our entire backlog. Plus tons of other great movies and original TV shows.